Let's bring in SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena. She joins us on the line. Sophie, pleasure having you on the program. Let's just get the viewers a sound understanding of what is at stake this time around in Zimbabwe. Help us understand, Ms. Sophie, the makeup of Zimbabwe's parliament.
Well, you know that in terms of the electoral act in that country, the makeup of parliament is different from how we do our, finalization of representatives of parliament in South Africa. They have a portion of mixed representation where you have 280 members who are elected directly based on constituencies in Zimbabwe. You also have 60 members or 60 seats. Those are allocated according to the proportional representation. And therefore, it is almost like our local government, because with our local government elections or sphere, you have the PR, and you also have those who are elected directly as councillors in the ward system. And therefore, it is the same. And therefore, due to the breakaway party or the tension within the MDC, which led to 3 different breakaways, where Thokozani Kupe had her own people, Dr. Thokozani Kupe, and then you also had Nelson Chamisa starting a new party called Citizen Coalition for Change with yellow colors. Now, during the recall of the MDC members who were sympathetic to Chamisa, Chamisa decided to go alone and started a new party. Now, this new kid on the block is the one who is currently pushing to ensure that those 28 seats that were vacant after a recall of those 28 MPs of MDC, and that would include even people who have passed on 1 or 2 years in there, they are able to get those seats and become members of parliament for the first time as the Triple C.
Right. So help us understand in terms of what's at stake here. Zimbabweans will be electing legislators as well as councillors to fill these posts left vacant due to recalls and fatalities, deaths of representatives. Talk to us about the electoral field in the build-up to today's elections.
Well, it was quite tense. One, it happened at the time where there was COVID-19. So these by-elections were supposed to have happened last year, and they couldn't happen. They couldn't take place. The Zimbabweans couldn't go back to the polls to elect these representatives at the local government and perhaps at the parliamentary level because of COVID-19. At that time, the opposition and some of the independent analysts and NGOs felt that the government is using COVID-19 not to fill those vacant posts. You know, in South Africa, we did fill vacant posts during COVID-19. There were by-elections. Around the world, there were national and presidential elections in different countries, and people were critical to say, why is Zimbabwe not going to by-elections? Because in other areas in different parts of the world, elections are continuing. And now finally this year, the elections are happening to fill those posts that are vacant. And therefore now you have this new kid on the block, which is the Triple C led by Chamisa, contesting elections for the first time. But the very same new party is complaining that campaigning, the environment was not conducive for campaigning, because when you look at stories that we have covered in Zimbabwe. Yeah. There were times where we had a diary of, what we will be covering. We will have a diary where we are saying we are covering the president in such a place, and we are also covering Nelson Chamisa's party at such a place. But later we'll get information that the rally of Chamisa has not been approved by the police, and police will always cite the issue of security, saying the ZANU-PF did make a big booking prior, but also the president will be there in that area. Therefore, they don't want the two groups to meet because it might lead to violence. Only to find that on the day the police said the president of Zimbabwe will be there, there is no Mnangagwa. I mean, the recent example last week in Binga, they were supposed to go there, the Chamisa group, but they were told they can't go because the president and his party will be at the same area. And at that time, President Mnangagwa was in Dubai. He only went there over the weekend for 3 days after. And therefore, there was this, subtle use of state apparatus in different diplomatic ways this time around to ensure that you don't really see a lot of these gatherings and campaigns of Chamisa. And the few ones that we saw, he had large numbers. But the question is, were those people who were at those rallies potential registered voters? And also, will the opposition, both MDC and Chamisa's party, be able to monitor the polling stations, send off their own monitors to ensure that everything goes according to the Electoral Act? It's another question, and there's no trust in the Electoral Commission of Zimbabwe from the CCC side.
Well, I wanted to get to the sentiment on the ground with regards to the Electoral Commission, but I just wanted to explain how should we read the latest developments in Zimbabwe in terms of the utterances from opposition parties. Zimbabwe's president, as we know, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has on many occasions called for peace during campaigning. Did this not assist in creating a better environment for these elections?
Of course, President Emmerson Mnangagwa did indicate many times that these elections must be free and fair and there must be peace. That's his slogan. But the security sector is doing something different. I mean, I've made an example of the police who are constantly not approving the gatherings of the opposition, the CCC. And therefore, you can't tell me that as a head of state, you don't know what the security cluster is doing. If you are a head of state, a commander-in-chief, a person who is supposed to chair the security meeting, you don't know that your police is stopping the opposition to campaign freely. Why are you a head of state? There's no such a thing. So it means there was a diplomatic way this time around to do things, to ensure that the international community is not aware. And at no point did I hear President Mnangagwa rebuking the police for that tendency of stopping the rally to an extent that the opposition had to go to court. And fortunately, on a number of occasions, the court took independent stance and ruled in favor of the opposition. And it did help Chamisa to be able to gather in some areas. In some areas, they couldn't completely.
Sophie, just before I let you go, how many provinces are included in this voting process?
As I pointed out, they are only contesting 28 constituencies at the parliamentary level. And therefore, you have also a chunk of the local government constituencies, but the main focus is on these 28 seats that are being contested, and majority of those seats were vacant or are vacant because of the recall of the NDC members of parliament.
Sophie Mokoena, thank you very much indeed for your reporting as always.